Buenos días. You're bilingual. And if you're willing to admit that you're from the great country of Texas, howdy. And for the rest of you, if you are a young person, I'm actually multilingual. What's up? When you devote your life to children, as I do, I used to open conferences in the past, and people ask me, in fact, Stephen asked me earlier, is it true that you spend sometimes 25 days of the month in the streets? I said, yes, I do. And I used to think, not thinking because English is my second language. I used to say, good morning, I'm a streetwalker. I didn't understand why people kept covering the ears of their children and asking the event coordinator, what has just happened here? But I do. I devote my life to children, and I wanted to share it with Rob, and he's here. But many, many years ago, I was invited to come to San Diego. And I believe Ms. Swanson was still, running the pack. And Rob, I guess you were there, brother. And, and they said, you need to come and join this sort of different kind of people. I said, well, I've been different my whole freaking life, so I'm aligned with AVID. So what else? They said they call themselves AVID, and they're really wanting to close the achievement gap. And they were a very small group of people. I don't remember, Rob. It was just a few of you. And they said, would you come to San Diego? I said, órale, man, San Diego, and they're paying me, I'll be there. But it's just wonderful, wonderful to see you through the years, to look at this beautiful room. My goodness. I said to Mark earlier, my brother, thank you for the introduction. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I got medals for courage and bravery as I served for 20 years of my life. But you don't. And so to me, what you represent is that you're angels on earth. And you don't get the special ceremony that talks about everything you do right in your school by taking the AVID philosophy. But what you do is you remember first in your heart that every child counts. Every child matters. I have some of my friends here from Bridgeport, Washington. And again, someone asked, where is this place? And it's a migrant community, way up close to Canada, which, by the way, I went across without papers, but they let me back. So, so far for that. But I went into places where a lot of people don't want to go. Sometimes I fly and I drive, and then I end up in a labor camp somewhere along the borders in the colonias because of two people. In their honor, I speak these humble words to you today. You'll see on the slide in a few minutes who my first teachers were in my life. And if you look at the screen, you'll see two individuals that to be honest with you, the minute that they would know that I was in a room as fancy and foo-foo as this one, that's my mom and my dad. That's who I come from. Thank you. And, you can see they're not wearing the Gucci Poochie nor do they have a Mont Blanc or anything like that. But as I learned through life about what we're trying to do is give everybody an opportunity to be their best. You see, my parents didn't carry all that kind of stuff, but what they did was they believed in simple values. And they didn't have a PhD or all kinds of credentials. But I'll never, ever, ever be ashamed of my parents because they had something just as important. They had a PhD in life. And that's what AVID's doing. It's giving life to those that don't believe they have a life. I don't know how many of you are still in the survivor mode from your mother's look. We're going to have a therapy session after this. But I learned that, according to my dad, who loved America, my father could never say the word America sitting down. And when you're just a kid and you're going to Mexico, visit la familia, and everybody's asking about your parents and what's it like over there in America, and my father would always stand up and he'd say, America! And I thought, man, that must be like Disneyland. But I came from this. I came from a mother that didn't play. You know what I mean? Man, she had two kinds of looks. There was the in public, I'm not going to hurt you and let you live look. You know what I mean? Okay? I mean, she always looked like somebody who was nice. And I look at my friend and say, who the heck is that lady? He says, that's your mother, man. She's trying to get your attention. I said, nah. Well, you want to see a Latina mother in her full form? Oh, yeah. That's the one I was raised by. And she don't even have to speak. As you can tell, I graduated cum laude from the Chancla Academy. So I think when all of us have a foundation in terms of values, then the question is, who then carries the rest of that? And that's where I found myself, then realizing that everyone else looked at me differently. Because my parents kept saying, tú eres el sueño americano. I thought, wow, I'm the American dream. Except when I got to school. Unfortunately, I had, as I walked in, my first language is el español. I walked in, I had a friend who, her English was a little further, and she was my translator. And I tell you one word that will always get you in most places, including bars, is the word in English, okay. That's all I knew. That got me through. So I go to school. My father says I'm the American dream. And I walk into school, and my friend, who's my translator, she's with me. She says, por aquí, por aquí. This is the way. I said, okay. But unfortunately, my two teachers were standing there in the hallway, and they said something like this. Oh, my. Here they come. So I said to my friend, oye, ¿qué dijo la maestra? Que ya llegamos. I said, oh my goodness, they've missed me. See, children don't know what they don't know. Children don't know that there's a dual track. Children don't know that somewhere along the way, somebody, without even knowing their life story, somebody without understanding that every child matters, because intellectuality doesn't have a last name. It simply is. Everybody has the same potential, but what matters is what's in our heart when we want to work with children. That's what matters. I didn't know that I was different. Then they said another thing. Again, I had my friend who's translating. And then she said, oh, I wish they'd go back. I said to my friend, oye, ¿qué dijo? Algo de que te regreses. They want me to go back. But I only live 2 blocks. No entiendo. Did I forget something? You see, when life gives you these sort of difference, as my friend Mark said, I understand when somebody's trying to make you feel different. But when you're a child, you don't understand those things. You don't know that there's a higher math and that there's calculus and trigonometry, that there's advanced courses. You don't know any of that because, we have to be led by somebody. And there has to be in that somebody a willingness and a conviction to look beyond color or a zip code and simply see America's promise. And so I didn't have no idea that I was just so different. And then I realized I had to sort of stand on this idea of who I was. And I want to thank my teachers. They had some wonderful teachers, by the way, folks. But this one teacher, she meant well. But, she was a real expert on classroom management. So these were the instructions. Class. So my translator, ¿qué dijo? Que te calles. Okay. We're going to learn to write our names. Okay. Now you listen. I'll call your name. You will go to the board and you will write your name. Okay. Dije, wow, this is my moment. When I go back to my barrio, I'm going to write my name everywhere. Now they call it graffiti, and you go to jail. Don't try it at home. And so I waited for the moment. It's a big moment. It's about me. And sure enough, Conseulo Castillo. I jumped. Buenos días, maestra, presente. She said, just go to the board. So I turned to my friend and said, okay. And as I got ready about to write my name, she said, now you turn around and look at me. And in our culture, we can't do that. So I looked down. She said, I'm going to tell you right now, your name will no longer be Consuelo. Your name is Connie. I kind of knew what that meant. So I put the chalk down and I said, ¿sabe qué? Yo no soy Connie de nadie. I'm nobody's Connie, okay? My name's Consuelo. And man, she went into classroom management 901. She said, I will not have that behavior in my classroom. You're going to, and she wrote and wrote and wrote. And then she click, 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 like if I could read. She says, you're going to see the principal. I thought, man, that's how you get to be famous, man. But in that moment, the principal read my note and she said, what is wrong with Connie? I tried to answer. I don't know, because I don't know her. She said, oh my God, we have an ESL student here. I said, ESL, ADD, HD, at risk, anyone, I'll answer. She said, young lady, why do you give yourself so many labels? I said, because you see, miss, unlike my parents, the minute I step out of my barrio, the minute I cross the street to the rest of the world, I'm all these things. ¿Sabe? And now you want to change my name. can I tell you something? En mi lengua. She said, yes. What is it, Consuelo? Why are you so determined to keep your name? I said, you see, miss? You see these parents? I live with secrets. I live in a home with a great family. But my mother, she's sick. I learned later in life, ladies and gentlemen, it's called depression. I said, I don't know why. There are days my mother loves me, and there are days she lets me know. I have the marks on my body. Maybe I'm not the one she wants. And so you see, miss, I'm already a bad kid to everybody else. I'm brown. I don't know your language. Yet I was born here. And yet everyone says, why don't I go back? You see, miss, all I want to be is the American dream. And most of all, I wish to keep Consuelo, for it is my mother's name. Principal broke down. She hugged me, and she came down to my eye level. I'll never forget that. She said, Consuelo, you are not all those things to me. You are the American dream. Let me write you a note. You will remain Consuelo, and you'll go back to your classroom. She wrote a beautiful note to the teacher, and she handed it to me. And I said, Miss, don't forget. Click, 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 click. Folks, I have handled some of the most sensitive secrets in the world, and I've never had that kind of security. She said, Consuelo, I don't need to do that. I trust you. For once in my life, someone had looked beyond my color, my zip code, my name, and simply treated me as this child that had potential. I believe Ms. Swanson and Rob and many others felt that same way 30 years ago. They asked themselves the question, why do children have to be treated different when they only know one thing? To be children. To dream, to play, to think, to pray, to laugh and cry. Why are we so determined to stamp them and to brand them and to tell them that who they are is not good enough? You see, folks, I've had every form of abuse you could imagine. But I always had a vision, because I want to show you in the next slide where that determination comes from. In 1948, my parents were starving, had 4 boys, decided to go up north to find a job. And when they got to Sterling, Illinois, with those 4 boys, how they got there is still a miracle. That's before MapQuest, folks. And you can imagine getting there in the dead of winter, and they had no other place to live. But I try to put this next slide because it's an image. If you can imagine, the only place they were given to live was a boxcar. They had derailed these cars, imagine those on the screen, and had put 125 of them on a cornfield. They painted them silver, which is why in the archives it's known as Silver City. And if you can look at this boxcar, it's simply 4 walls of steel. But when you think about the American dream, and where many of the children that you're going to meet today under the stewardship of Mr. Granier, I think you'll get a feel for what it means to have a vision. You see, folks, on one given night, my mother said to my father early in their arrival, she said, Pedro, a ver cómo le haces. But tonight I must put curtains up. Now my father, a Mexican man, said, do I tell this mujer, a mexicana, that there are no windows? He thought about it for 2 seconds. He said, no, I want to live. So he went to the shop and he told a foreman and a friend, he says, hey, he said, la vieja, that's darling in English. Eh? It's part of your bilingual lesson today. He said, la vieja quiere poner cortinas. She wants to put curtains. He said, but there are no windows. He said, but the woman wants curtains. We're going to have curtains. He said, not a problem. You see, when we come out of poverty, somebody sometimes thinks that we've got so much, so little, and we need so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to celebrate and give dignity and respect to what sometimes is a marginal term like poverty. People talk about thinking outside the box. Look, we never had a freaking box. We had creativity and innovation. There was no Toys R Us. It was Toys I Make. And my father looked at this man. He said, my wife wants curtains, so I will think about how I do that. And he took these two friends of ours, and they soldered, and they worked, and they found ways for two poles to stand up against that steel wall. And they put them together, and he went to my mother, and he said, viejita, aquí está, I did it. And she put curtains up, and he said, I have to ask you, why do you want curtains when there are no windows? And my mother looked at my father, and she said, perhaps that is what you see. And perhaps to the rest of the world, this is but just a boxcar. She said, but I refuse to accept that for my children. I have taken this box, and in this box, it will never be a box. It will be my home. And there might be steel walls. And I may not be able to see today, but one thing I will tell you, I will put curtains so that my children will have a greater vision, and they will be the American dream. You see, we have to be that. When I look at your logo, yeah, we were nothing but little bugs. Okay, figuratively. But she knew that one day she'd give us these wings. But she wondered, who would be the wind beneath those wings? And as I begin to close, I have somebody with a thing saying, you got to go. And I respect that. The wings is who you are. You are truly the wind and the wings. You are the ones who will return in the next few days back to the reality of your classrooms. You will think again of what to do with the material. You will prepare. But I beg of you today, there are things that we cannot buy, that you must possess with all that AVID has done, and that's your heart. Look into your heart, and then connect the mind. Look at the children, and see that there, rise again, will be America's leaders. And as I finish, I had one teacher who changed my life, like Miss Swanson thought. We have to make a difference, like Rob and many of you 30 years ago. Mr. Cooper. This is white dude, okay? Hung out in the barrio, thought that we were smart for some reason. I'm in the middle of my street fighting. It's called communication. Interdisciplinary. I did not discriminate who I fought with. I'm in the middle of my street fighting, and he breaks it up, and he says these words to me. Miss Castillo, why do you use this when you could be using this? Young lady, you are brilliant. I said, hey, Mr. Cooper, you've been doing that stuff. You know. And he spoke this amazing high order of English. I do not need to toxify my body. My cognitive skills. I said, oh my God, he's into the mushrooms, man. But Mr. Cooper took me into the library, tested me. I'm a high school graduate, and he says to me, Miss Castillo, you sure you went to school? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, according to this test, you're retarded. I said, see, now you have it in writing. And he took the test. I'll never forget that. And he said, I'll never let one score determine the future of one child. He said, let me be the one. You see, one of our programs, we use Helen Keller's words because it reminds me of Mr. Cooper, and it reminds me of you. I am one. I am only one. But still, I am one. I cannot do everything, but still, I can do something. Mr. Cooper taught me to read. And then he introduced me to a whole world where it doesn't matter what you look like, because they don't talk back to you. It's called books. I was reading, and the proliferation was excelling. And Mr. Cooper tested me again one more year later. And he was so excited. He said, Miss Castillo, please, you must hear the great news. I said, I was not on the news, Mr. Cooper, last night. He said, young lady, you're not retarded. You're gifted. You're going to college. Why? Because he put rigor, because he had high standards, and because he came and he sat on that sofa that was broken. And he looked at two humble parents, and he told them, let her go to college. She's ready. I'll be responsible. And so I left the dusty streets of Laredo, Texas, and I landed in West Texas. You know what I mean? That's two worlds, folks. When the dorm mother says, would you like to see your room? And she showed me a bed with a mattress. I said, excuse me, but how many people gonna sleep here? She held on to her cross. She said, honey, we don't do that here. I realized, oh, she doesn't understand. I said, no. I said, miss, what I tried to say is that I've been sleeping with somebody, my brothers, for 19 years. This is the first time I sleep by myself. She says, oh my God, are you an exchange student from somewhere? I say, yes, from Laredo, Texas. Well, I said to Mark that one asked the question why I served. Folks, my father wanted to be a citizen, but his English just wasn't good enough. Para la madre que está aquí apoyando a su hijo,
al Padre. No tengan pena. Tomen en cuenta que más que nada es su presencia y sus enseñanzas, que le dicen a sus hijos que sí se puede. I spoke to the mother that told me earlier she was afraid that her English was so limited. So I said to her, it doesn't matter. What matters is that she's here and that she's giving to her child the greatest gift of all, her love and her support. I joined the United States Army because my father could not read. And he just wanted to be a little flag this big. He couldn't get it, folks. And we tried to buy him one. That didn't go over so well. So my father said these words. Este no es mi país, pero sí es el suyo. This could not be my country, it is yours. Si no le pueden dar, no me le quiten. If you cannot give to this country, don't you dare take from it. And if the only flag that I would ever accept será porque cada uno de ustedes le sirvió a su país. It is only because one or all of you stood up for your country. Then only then would I accept any flag. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, of my 10 brothers and sisters, 8 of us are veterans. You see, sweet. So don't give up the fight. May AVID have another reunion, Rob. May, when our time comes, my friend, Mr. Nelson, those of us who lead the way now, let us make a road so wide and so open that there need not be a sign. AVID is here. But more so in remembrance, and let us remember that AVID was and will be. But AVID, beyond the acronym, has something more important. It's a spirit. It is a belief, like we learned in kindergarten, and I leave you with these words. When I pledged allegiance, I believed it with all my heart. My English was broken then, but I say we still remain one nation. Help me out, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, AVID. Many blessings.